Good morning, Yidden. So apparently the end of the last week's the class from Friday didn't come out in audio. I apologize. Hopefully, according to what I see now, it looks like it's working. So I apologize to our viewers. But the last 10 minutes, the audio last week didn't come out for some reason. Anyway, okay. So today what we're going to do is we're going to look at the Mishnah, the next Mishnah in the Gemara, which takes us to the rest of this, begins our process to the rest of the Seder, which is really the halachas of the third and fourth cup of wine. The third and fourth cup of wine, which most of the discussion is actually going to be going forward. The next page or two is going to be about the halal. That's what comes next. The laws of benching are not going to be discussed here. That's discussed in Tractate Brachos, right? So the laws of halal is going to be discussed. The recitation of the halal is going to be discussed in the next, the rest of halal, second half of halal, discussed in the next page or two. And then after that's going to be the law of the Afikoimon. So this is where we are. So what we're going to do is we're going to look at the Mishnah itself. And there's going to be a particular halacha in the Mishnah that's going to leave us a little bit ambiguous. And there's lots of discussion around that halacha, which appears to be ambiguous. And we're going to look at the Alter Shulchan Aruch, which is going to synthesize for us all the various different discussions about that ambiguous halach. So let's see what that is. That's what we're going to do today. Okay? So we begin with the Mishnah itself on the bottom of 117b, Kufid Zayin and the days. The Mishnah at the bottom. You see what it says in big bold letters, Mas Nisan, the Mishnah. Yeah, you see it? Yeah, that's the Mishnah. You have it? You sure you have it? Yeah. Okay. So Mazgoloi Koi Shlishi, his third cup of wine is now filled after his meal, after eating matzah, mutter, and so on. And Mevarech al Mezoinoi. He then makes a blessing, thanking Hashem for his food. The benching, as we call it in Yiddish, the grace after meals in English. So he recites over that cup this bracha that concludes benching. Revi, the fourth cup of wine. Goimer alav, as halal, he completes the halal. He already began halal just before he drank his second cup of wine. He began, according to Hillel, our custom, the halacha as we rule it, following Hillel, that we read the first two chapters of halal. And now with the fourth cup of wine, after benching, he concludes the halal. Yeah. And then afterwards, at the conclusion of the halal, he recites the blessing of song. The Gemara is going to discuss what that is, but it's at the end of every halal we do it. After we finish every halal, we say Halalucha Hashem Elokeinu, and we conclude with the bracha Baruch Atah Hashem, Melech Mahula Batish Brachos, right? It's a blessing of song. It's a blessing of the halal. The Gemara is going to discuss a little more elaborate of what we do on the night of the Seder, but it's essentially a concluding bracha for halal. Yeah. Okay. That we'll discuss in the Gemara. So what did we learn so far? Two basic halachas, that the third cup of wine we recite the benching, and the fourth cup of wine we finish the halal. Halal, conclude the halal. Now comes the ambiguous halacha, which leaves us not clear on a certain element. Yeah. As follows. Bein hakoises halalu, between these two sets of cups. Between these two sets of cups. Yes. Not being koises halalu, not between these two cups, but between two sets of cups. Which means between number 1 and 2 and number 3 and 4. So if we have two sets of cups, one that's in 1 and 2 before we eat anything, and one is 3 and 4 after we eat anything. Between these two sets, okay, which means basically between 2 and 3, between cup 2 and 3, which is between two sets of cups. Im ratzo lishtais, if a person wants to drink, ishta, go ahead and drink. It's your meal time. Drink as you like. That's the ambiguity. But if we translate it literally, beina koises halalu, it's not between. It could have said bein koises halalu, between these cups. It doesn't say that. It says bein hakoises halalu, between these sets of cups. It's like a double. It's not these sets of cups. It's double. It's double plural. Between these sets of cups. Sorry. That's right. So you can drink as much as you like. You can drink as much as you'd like. That's what he's saying. That's right. But now it comes like this. Bein shlishi l'ravi, between cup 3 and 4, lo yishta, you shouldn't drink. End Mishnah. Where's the ambiguity? We just said between 2 and 3. One second. Listen clearly again. Between 2 and 3, said the Mishnah, don't drink. Between 2 and 3, you may drink. Yes? Go ahead, drink. Between 3 and 4, don't drink. Where's the ambiguity? What's left unclear?
So normally it should be from 2 to 3 normally.
Again, listen. Between 2 and 3, you're allowed to drink. Between 3 and 4, don't drink. End quote from the Mishnah. What's missing? No. Which cup number did I start from? Yes, again. Between 2 and 3, you may drink. Between 3 and 4, don't drink. What's missing? What's the halakha? Oh, what's the halakha between 1 and 2? It's not mentioned. It says you're allowed to drink between 2 and 3. It says you cannot drink between 3 and 4. It doesn't say anything about between 1 and 2. Why? Ambiguous. Oh. So you can learn it in one of two ways, or actually multiple ways, but let's just take one of two ways. Either you can say, the Mishnah said, between these sets, you may drink. Meaning to say each set should be left alone. And the same way you're not allowed to drink between 3 and 4, you're also not allowed to drink between 1 and 2. You could make that argument.
2 and 3 and 4, you deal with 3 cups. Cup 3 is the common denominator between 2 and 4.
I don't understand that. Explain again.
The sets they're talking about is 3 cups.
It says it's 4 cups.
Because 2 and 3 and 3 and 4. Where's cup?
Cup 2 wasn't mentioned in this Mishnah at all. Cup 2 was mentioned in the previous Mishnah. So, right?
So you said 2 and 3.
Well, again, so but the Mishnah, that's how it comes out. But the phrasing is between these sets of cups. These sets of cups, which means between 1 and 2 and 3 and 4, don't drink, which basically comes between 2 and 3. And then between 3 and 4, don't drink. So because of the phrasing, because of between these cups, don't drink, you could say that it means only between these sets you can't, only in the middle of the 2 sets you're allowed to drink. But between 1 and 2 and between 3 and 4, you're not allowed to drink. That's what you could say. Or you could say, well, no, the Mishnah only said between 3 and 4 you may not drink, which means between 1 and 2 you can. Right? You can read it both ways. And this is a big discussion amongst the Rishonim, amongst the commentaries of the Mishnah. So now let's look at the Alter Shulchan Aruch and the text I sent you, the link. Again, we're going straight to like the conclusion, but there's a lot more discussion till that conclusion is achieved. Yeah? So it's chapter 473 of, it's in the text I sent you on your phone. I sent you a text on your phone. Click on the link. You'll be able to follow along. No, I sent you a link. Look at your text. You see, I sent you a link there. Click on the link and you can follow along. So the halacha 473 chapter is called, not in English. I couldn't find it actually. Maybe it's somewhere. I don't know. I can't find it because we haven't printed it once and I can't find it. For some reason, I don't know if we have the English. Maybe. Okay. So 473. The halacha is called the laws governing the first cup of wine and this order of the Pesach Seder until the second cup of wine. So here would be the discussion about whether or not you're allowed to drink between cup 1 and 2. Yes? Much of this chapter we learned.
We discussed this.
I don't know that we discussed these particular halachas. Okay, we'll see. We'll see. I don't think we discussed these halachas in particular. Maybe. But we did speak a lot about this chapter because we spoke a lot about the first cup. We spoke about the charesis, which comes here. We spoke about the setting of the Seder plate. We spoke about the dipping. We spoke about the 4 questions. All these things come up between the first and second cup. So we discussed quite a bit of this chapter. But I don't think we did these particular halachas, which is about whether you're allowed to drink or not between these 2 cups of wine. So let's look at halacha number, it's 3 halachas, 11, 12, and 13. So scroll down to halacha number 11. Scroll down to halacha number 11 in that link. Yeah? Yeah, there. Number 11, big red. You have it? Yud Aleph. Sorry? We can read it in English because I don't want to take too much time and I want to cover everything. Yeah, Hebrew we can do? Sorry? You see? Excuse me. Thank you. Oh, yeah? Okay. Halacha number 11. Yud Aleph. Imratza lishtes kama koises. If a person would like to drink many cups of wine, bein miyad lachar kiddush, whether right after kiddush, right after drinking cup number 1, bein be'emtza haggadah, whether he's in the middle of the haggadah, koidem shehischel birkas asher ga'alanu, before he comes to the concluding bracha, which is asher ga'alanu, at the end of halal, before he drinks the second cup. If you'd like to drink at this point, harashus biyadai, permission is granted, me'ikir din, as far as the letter of the law goes. It's not explicit in our Mishnah. Right? This Mishnah is not explicit about not drinking between 1 and 2. It only says between 2 and 3 you may, between 3 and 4 you may not. It doesn't say anything about 1 and 2. So as far as the letter,
Just says these.
between these sets, which means between 2 and 3, it doesn't say anything about between 1 and 2. Right? And it does explicitly say between 3 and 4 you may not drink, without saying anything about what the law is between 1 and 2. Okay, so as far as the strict letter of the law goes, you may drink between 1 and 2. Okay?
Process of elimination.
Correct. So what's mentioned and what's not mentioned in the Mishnah?
We're looking at the Gemara, and then we talk back to the halachas to see how the Gemara is understood.
I understand what you're saying.
Looking at the halachas to figure out what.
No. The Mishnah just said its statement, and then there's generations of commentary, and now the Alter Rebbe is synthesizing all of it. So we're reading the synthesis at the end of all of this generations of discussion. Okay. Then it continues. Ba'af became nonetheless, even though as far as the letter of the law goes, you may drink between 1 and 2, Af became nonetheless, Roy Luzar is appropriate to be particular, Shaloi Lishis Yayin, not to drink wine, V'loi Lishum Mashke Meshaker, and don't drink any other beverage that will cause one to be intoxicated. Kosher LePesach, whiskey, tequila, let's say, which is kosher for Passover, it's not made of any wheat, right? So don't drink that. Koidim Shasim Haggadah, don't do so until you have concluded the Haggadah. V'shosa Kosheni, you drank your second cup. Im lo ritzarech harbe, unless there is some major need that you have to drink this glass. Why? Shelo yishtaker v'yimna makriyas Haggadah, so that you don't become drunk and then make it more difficult for you to read the Haggadah. So what's the Alter Rebbe saying? Now, what's the reason why what's the reason? No, it's like this. Not drinking between 3 and 4 is an inherent prohibition. You may not drink between 3 and 4. Between 2 and 3, go ahead, drink. Why? Because you're in your meal, as we'll see in a minute. And in your meal, when you drink, it doesn't cause you to be intoxicated as much because you're in the middle of eating. Between 2 and 3. But between 1 and 2, I'm sorry, the problem is not the drinking. The problem is you may get drunk. So it's not like an inherent prohibition not to drink. It's just, practically speaking, don't drink because you might get drunk. And that would kind of explain the ambiguity of the Mishnah. And not explicitly stating, don't drink, but also not explicitly stating, you may drink. Because in theory you could, but it's just not good because you're going to be drunk. Not advisable is the right way to say it. That's right. Which means if I want to drink water, let's say, maybe I could. Right? But between 3 and 4, maybe even water I can't drink. We'll get there. We'll see. But maybe even that I can't drink. More explicit. Don't drink between 3 and 4. It doesn't say don't drink wine. It says don't drink. Period. Very general. That's right. Okay. So now we're getting an idea of this ambiguity. Let's see. Continues Alter Rebbe. After you drank a second cup of wine, you could drink wine, whether a lot, whether a little, before your meal. Drink. Now, even though we said in chapter 471, we learned this way back when. We learned in 471, way back when, that a person should not drink a little bit of wine on Erev Pesach. Why? Because a little bit of wine will make you feel satiated, and you're not going to come to the Seder with an appetite. So maybe now, after a second cup of wine, you shouldn't drink because you're going to ruin your appetite for your matzah, which you're about to eat. Maybe. Says the Alter Rebbe, no, why? Because if you drink a little, it closes the appetite. If you drink a lot, it opens the appetite. And how many cups of wine have you drunk already? You already drank 2. So whatever little you're going to drink now is not going to close your appetite. It's going to open it more. So you're allowed to drink after cup number 2, even before your matzah. Then she says, nonetheless, because you just finished drinking 2 cups of wine, 1 for Kiddush and 1 for the Agada, even if you drink a little bit more, it's already considered a lot of wine. Combining with the first 2 cups you just drank, the goyer is a type of lamaychal, and it actually opens your appetite for eating, not closes. By contrast, when you drink a little bit on Erev Pesach, that little bit from Erev Pesach is not going to conjoin with the 2 at the Seder to make it a lot of wine. Because there's a lot of time between them. You drink a little bit at Erev Pesach until you come to your Seder. It's a while later. Okay. So after cup number 2, you may drink. Even though the issue of being drunk is not an issue because you're about to eat a meal. And when you eat your meal, you don't get as drunk. And the issue of ruining your appetite is not there either because you just had 2 cups of wine. And the 3rd cup of wine is not going to ruin your appetite. It's going to open your appetite. So between 2 and 3, you're allowed to drink. Win-win. Sorry? Yeah, well, we're doing the halacha. Okay, let's see. I don't want to take too much time because we're running late, and I want to finish this before so we can continue tomorrow. Halacha base number 12. All of this, if all of this is only true if you're in a circumstance, if the halacha says you aren't required to make a new hagafen on the drink you're about to have. For example, because remember, there's different opinions. We spoke this once before. There's different opinions. Do you make a hagafen on each of the 4 cups or not? We do make a hagafen on each of the 4 cups of wine, right? Because each is a self-standing mitzvah, right? But when I make kiddush, if I have no intention of drinking any cup of wine till cup number 2, and then in the middle I decide, you know what, I want to have another glass of wine now, I would have to make a hagafen. That says Alter Rebbe, you're not allowed to do. So the wine's not the problem. Hagafen's the problem. Allowed. When it comes to between 2 and 3, when you make the hagafen on your first 2 cups, it's implicit that it's going to cover all the wine of your meal. Just like when you make kiddush, it's implicit it's going to cover all the wine of your meal. Whether or not you have a positive intention to drink wine during the meal, it's implicit that you're going to be drinking more. But between 1 and 2, it's not implicit that you're going to be drinking more wine. So unless you have an actual positive intention and I'm going to be drinking more wine between 1 and 2, you'd be required to make a new hagafen. And that you can't do. That's what you can say now. So the permissibility to drink between, no, I'm sorry. Yes. I'm sorry. No, sorry, you're right. The permissibility to drink between 2 and 3 is when you don't have to make a new hagafen. Yes, I'm sorry, you're correct. All right, because 1 and 2, the same thing would apply to 1 and 2. But with 1 and 2, you have another problem, which you can't let yourself get drunk. So there too, you have to have intention. Okay, let's see. But you're right. He's talking about between 2 and 3. So the permissibility to drink between 2 and 3 is going, for example, when he made the bracha hagafen on either cup 1 or 2, he had intention to drink more wine. Later in his meal, or before soda. So you're right. I was wrong. It's not implicit in your hagafen that you're going to be drinking throughout the meal. You have to actually have a positive intention that you're going to be drinking throughout the meal. I was wrong. It's not implicit. You actually have to have in mind when you make hagafen on cup 1 or 2 that you're going to be drinking in the meal.
The bottom line is you're not allowed to make another bread for your hagafen.
Correct.
So if you did have in mind to drink more wine, then you can't.
That's correct. You have to make correct. Why can't you make another hagafen? But if later he If you didn't have a mind to drink more wine, and then later you decided, you know what, I want to drink wine before the meal, which means that's why I was saying in the meal, I think it's implicit.
Because it doesn't matter if you had intentionality or
I think in the meal, not because in the meal, I believe it's implied you will drink. The same way by Kiddush, it's implied. I'm pretty sure. That's why out there adds quite a masada in the parentheses here. So if you didn't have a mind to drink an extra cup of wine before the meal, even because now you're going to be required to make a new hagafen, and you're going to be doing so. I'll call down and following our custom, you'll end up making a hagafen in the same way you do a hagafen by all the other 4 cups of wine, as our custom is. It would appear as if you're adding a 5th cup. When you're drinking in your meal as part of your enjoyment of your meal,
no one's going to
assume it's a new cup of wine.
You're at the cup,
Oh,
you're just drinking
but if you make a new hagafen, you will. It will look like you're making a new cup, especially according to our custom, we make a new hagafen in each cup. Therefore, do not drink another cup of wine in such circumstances where it's going to require you to make a new hagafen. And what are those circumstances? Between either 1 or 2, or 3 or 4, or 2 or 3. Between 2 and 3, if you're drinking before the meal, you'll have to make a new hagafen unless you explicitly had in mind to have another a cup. Follow?
when you're having your meal.
Right, that's the permissibility, but only if you're not going to have to make a new hagafen. What about between 2 and 3 before hamoitzi, before you eat matzah, before your meal?
That's what I.
He said you're allowed to because it's not going to make before your meal. In your meal, I'm going to learn here because of the parentheses there, and in your meal it's implied. But before the meal, before you wash, you want to have another cup of wine. You're allowed to only if you had in mind not to have another cup. Not allowed to, and you'd have to make a hagafen if before you washed you drank another cup when you didn't have in mind to do so before. Okay. Now, I'm going to add one more little detail here before we get to number 13, and then we'll conclude. Is the Chabad Rebbes would not say l'chaim at their meal. They would drink wine during the meal, but they wouldn't say l'chaim. They wouldn't say l'chaim with the bracha. You know, you hold a cup of wine, you say l'chaim. They wouldn't say l'chaim at the meal, and it would seem because if they would say l'chaim at the meal, it would turn that cup into like it would give it a certain chashivish, it would give it a certain like validity that would make it appear as if we're adding to the cups of wine. So they would drink wine at the meal, but they would not say l'chaim at the meal of the seder. And it would seem, for this reason, not to make it look like we're giving a new specialty to a new cup, because there's only 4 cups tonight. Okay, final halacha number 13, then we'll let everybody go. Sorry, we're rushing this because we're just running late today. Nevertheless, one may drink other drinks. So you may drink water between 2 and 3, or even between 1 and 2, I believe. Even though you have to make a bracha, you have to make a shahakal. Why? When you make a shahakal on a water or on a tea, it's not going to look as if you're adding a 4th cup. Because the 5th cup, because the 4 cups are wine, and this is a water. But what happens if the other cups you're drinking are chamar medina, which are like this special stature of wine of drink, and therefore even though tonight he's drinking 4 cups of wine, nonetheless, he cannot drink those things because he should not drink those other ones because, in theory, he could use those 4 cups of wine, and if we shouldn't drink them if he's going to be required to make a new bracha. I don't know what that'll apply to. It might apply to it might apply to tequila. It might apply to tequila or rum. Sorry.
Bottom line, we went through a lot of things. The bottom line.
We don't use chamar medina, but in theory you could use chamar medina. And because in theory you could, if you can take a glass of, you're going to take, but the appearance is still there. You're going to take a glass of your favorite rum, right? Which is kosher for Passover. It's a special bottle. It's maybe even more expensive than the wine you drank before. And make a shahakal and you drink it. Not nice. Looks like you're adding to the cups. So if you have to make if you don't make a bracha because you had in mind,